Good afternoon, everyone. Hello and welcome to the Council of State Government's Youth Policy Center's first Transitioning to Employment Youth Perspective Dialogue. My name is Dina Klimkina, and I'm a program manager here at CSG. We're so incredibly excited to have you all join us and hear more about how youth and young adults with disabilities are finding their way and getting ready for work. Next slide. As we get started, I'd first like to draw your attention to a few housekeeping items. To follow along with captioning, open the captioning webpage in a new browser. You can click the link posted in the chat box, and the link is also displayed here on the screen. You can also adjust the background color, text color, and font using the drop-down menus at the top of the browser. Make sure to click back to the webinar browser and position the window to sit directly above captioning. If you have any questions, please submit them through the questions panel, and we'll save time at the end for Q&A. Feel free to ask at any time. Now, let's get started. Next slide. So first, we'd like to tell you a little bit about our Youth Center. We work to improve employment outcomes for youth and young adults with disabilities by helping state governments improve service delivery in their workforce systems. We're a collaboration between the Council of State Governments, Cornell University, the University of Massachusetts, and the United States Department of Labor's Office of Disability Employment Policy. Essentially, we work with state governments to help them improve job and training opportunities for you all. Next slide. When thinking about increasing access to employment and training opportunities, we'd like to identify strategies that best innovate and help you all find your path. So here, our goal for the day is to learn from you and from your peers. Next slide. In identifying strategies and pathways to work, a few of the things that we can utilize are apprenticeships, pre-apprenticeships, trainings, individualized plans for employment, or IPEs, and internships and work-based learning. There's a number of other tools, including career shadowing and training, and we'd like to talk about all of that today. So today we'll have two speakers who will both discuss their experiences with employment and training. And after we hear from our speakers, we want you all to think about your experience and share with us. Next slide. That said, we'd love to hear from you. Please feel free to join the conversation in whatever way you feel comfortable. You can message in the chat box, answer polls we'll be posting throughout the webinar, direct message us, or email us at youthimpact@csg.org. Feel free to engage in any way you feel comfortable. Now, let's get started, and I'll turn it over to my colleague, Sydney Geiger. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Sydney Geiger from the Council of State Governments. I'm very excited to introduce you to our first speaker, Clayton Carroll. Clayton is a motivational speaker from Kentucky. He's 24 years old. He lives at home with his parents, brother, sister, and 2 dogs. He graduated high school in 2015, and since graduation, he's been telling others about his wonderful high school inclusion experience. And he works 2 days a week at the Bread Life Cafe, 1 day a week at a daycare, and he also volunteers with the Casey County Marching Band, while also being a motivational speaker. So he stays pretty busy. He loves hanging out with his friends, listening to music, and playing the drums. So he's been a keynote speaker at many events across the state of Kentucky, and he loves talking to students with disabilities. So very excited to welcome you, Clayton. And Clayton, I want to pass it over to you, if you wouldn't mind to introduce yourself to the group and tell us a little bit about yourself and your work.
As Cindy said, I am Clayton Carroll, and I am 24 years old, and I have Williams syndrome. And this is my mom, Stella Beard, and we are so honored to be here today with y'all. We're just so excited to be here, like as we said, and thank you for having us, Cindy.
Thank you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about where you're from and your experience in high school and your jobs now?
Sure. So I live in a little small town called Dunville, Kentucky, and it's a really small town, and I've been at the Bread Life for 6 years and the daycare 1 year.
And you work with the marching band too, right?
Yeah.
Were you in the marching band in
Yeah.
high school?
Yes, I've been helping the band for 5 years, but it's probably going to be my 6th year of helping the band this year.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So how did you get involved with these jobs? How did you find your job at the Bread of Life?
Well, after, I think it was like after high school.
No, you actually started your senior year of high school.
Well, I graduated like after, like I graduated in 2015, and I had a real good year in high school, and my mom wanted me to work at the Bread Light Cafe after I graduated, and it was probably the most easiest job that it was probably the most easiest job that I ever had, and I love working there. All of the workers that I work with, they're really nice people. I just been so blessed to know them, and and I'm just glad to work there and also at the daycare. So it's pretty easy, I guess, for 2 jobs.
What's cool though is when you started at the Bread of Life,
Yeah.
he had a job coach that through vocational rehabilitation that went with him and helped him quite a bit until he
Yeah.
learned everything there at the cafe and learned his responsibilities. And then what we did is we really just moved into those natural supports. So a lot of folks that work there with Clayton assist him as needed. And so we stopped all supports that were coming and helping him at the Bread of Life. And now he just has all of his peers that help him, which is really neat. And the same for the daycare.
Yeah.
He had a job coach that would check on him occasionally, but now he just goes and, well, right now he's off work because of COVID-19, right? But he's when he's there, he's pretty much on his own and knows all of his duties and really enjoys that connection with the community.
That's awesome. Sounds like you're a hard worker.
I am. I can probably say, like, when I go to the Bread Light Cafe, I get a lot of paychecks every now and then because our manager Amanda, she usually helps me in the kitchen when I don't know what I'm doing there, because she helps me a lot with where does everything go, and I just try to do my best at that.
That's awesome. Can you share what skills you need to work at your jobs and what you've learned?
What are your duties? What are some of the things you do at work?
So at the Bread Light Cafe, I go there like every Monday, Tuesday, but I'm not working this year because of the coronavirus. But anyway, so what I do is every Monday I get there around 4 o'clock, and then around 2 o'clock.
Mondays you're there at 2, and
Monday.
Tuesdays you're there at 4.
Let's all over. Sorry. 2 o'clock Monday and 4 o'clock on Tuesdays. So when I get there, I put my apron on, I check in, and I just do everything that I can. And
you also like put the dishes on the buffet.
I do a lot of dishes, and I usually I get up around 8 o'clock every Monday and Tuesday night, and then I eat dinner around 6 o'clock.
Clayton, I have one more question for you.
Sure, go ahead.
You talk about, so who all helped you go from school to a job? So this could be, was it people at school, your family? It can be a lot of different people, but just curious to hear who helped you with that.
Okay, so my mom honestly helped me finding a job like after high school. She she really helped me out with everything, and I'm really glad that my mom she really helps me out with everything, and
You also had a great teacher in
I
school,
did.
Miss Stevens.
Miss Stevens. Oh, Miss
She was,
Stevens.
and Mr. Williams, your
Mr.
band
Williams, my
director.
band director. Miss Stevens she was my teacher when I was in high school, and then our band director, Mr. Williams, he's at a different school right now. He is actually at Adair County right now. He's got a new job at Adair County school. I think the middle school.
I'm not sure, but one of the things that Mr. Williams really saw in you, Clayton, that we loved is when Clayton was in the band, he's very gifted in music and a percussionist, plays the drums.
I love
and
drums.
That's right. And so when Clayton exited high school, Mr. Williams saw that gift and asked Clayton to come back. So for 5 years after he graduated high school, he came back as a volunteer, but worked as a band staff assistant with the marching band. So that was a wonderful transition for Clayton as he was out in the community working jobs.
Yeah.
He also got to go back to high school and work with high school students as a staff advisor and helped the percussion section and attended all of their competitions. And so that was an amazing opportunity for him. And he still goes and volunteers occasionally, not as much as he was when Mr. Williams was there as the band director, but that opportunity is still there for him. And so we really think that's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure they love having you. I want to have one last question. Is there any sort of job or training that you still want to try one day?
Ooh.
I don't know. What do you think? What's something else you'd like to do? Other than working at the Bread of Life or the daycare, what's something else you might like to do?
Well, probably work at a music store.
Awesome.
Because I'm a music fan, and I love gospel music, like Christian gospel music, and I'm not a big fan of rap music, or because I cannot stand rap music at all. But anyway, I would like to work at a music store sometime.
It's awesome.
That's great, Clayton. Well, if you ever need any help with any trainings or with figuring out how to get those jobs, that's what we do. Is we're trying to connect the gaps and help youth find the opportunities that they need, and let policymakers and government workers know what you all need so that you can have these jobs that you would like. So thank you so much, Clayton. We're so glad to have you, and thank you
very much
for joining us.
And I'll do a plug real quick. I think one of the things that has that gap there is because we do live very rural. We're in a very rural community, and the opportunities are not quite as available as they are in, say, Fayette or Jefferson, just because we are very rural. Transportation is always a concern. Getting back and forth to jobs. So he has to depend a lot on family and friends, and also paid staff through Medicaid waivers to help him. So, we always are advocating for more opportunities in our rural communities.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cindy.
Yes, thank you all. All right, we're going to move on to our next speaker, Joseph Berry. So if we can move to the next slide, please. Great. So Joseph is currently a doctorate student at the University of Kentucky studying education policy and evaluation. Joseph has a master's degree in disability studies from California Baptist University, a bachelor's degree in intercultural communications from Sacramento State, and an AA in music from Sacramento City College. So he recently co-authored a publication that addressed diversity gaps amongst college faculty in the U.S., and his main goals are centered around programming in secondary and post-secondary education. Joseph has been a disability advocate at the state and local level for over a decade. He served on the California Employment Development Department's Disability Advisory Committee. So he has successfully advocated the state and for initiatives such as providing food stamps to over 1 million Californians with disabilities. And he's held officer positions for several nonprofit boards and advocacy organizations. He ran for city council in 2018 and was recognized as a disability rights champion. So he has a very long and impressive resume, and we're so lucky to have him here with us today. So welcome, Joseph. We'll just start out by you just giving us a little introduction, telling us a little bit more about yourself and your transition experience.
Right. So, okay, thank you. I didn't realize that my resume or bio sounded so spectacular, but made me smile. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm from Sacramento, California. Like Clayton, I too share a love for music, as I had first got my degree in music and originally started out doing music business back home. And so, well, I kind of grew up a little bit rough, you know, in the inner city, if you will. I experienced homelessness during my transition years from high school and when I graduated from high school. And so, yeah, I really have a near place in my heart, if you will, for you know, that transition age, you know, that phase that everyone goes through who attend post-secondary education, but particularly there for persons experiencing disability and similar adversity.
Great. Thank you so much. We're so excited to have you. And thank you for sharing about your experience. Can you just share a little bit about the transition to post-secondary education and kind of some of the skills you needed to do that?
Yeah, I think Clayton did quite well too to say you know, never give up. I think as is the case with anybody, you know, when you're going from high school to college, obviously there's an amount of you know, pressure or adversity and those kinds of things that would make anyone want to kind of give up or not pursue their goals in higher education. But I think particularly for persons with disabilities, I think that you have to have that drive really kind of ingrained in you. You know, you have to have that want to more than anything, or you know, in a way that's almost unique to persons with disabilities, because not just the adversity that you might face from people, if you will, or from teachers, instructors, and those kinds of things, but just the nature of being sometimes can be a lot for somebody, and so I think that I wouldn't underemphasize enough how much it means for somebody to really hold that near their heart, that drive and that never give up kind of mentality, and that you know, don't take no for an answer, if you will, and be able to kind of hone in on what your goals are and not be deterred, you know, by circumstance or otherwise.
Yes, thank you so much. So you talked a lot about self-advocacy and driving and staying true to your goals. What about using any services or having any people who help support you? Would you mind talking about anyone who's helped you in that journey?
Right. So during that time when I was transitioning, I just remember that was kind of you know, a precipice kind of moment in my life, if you will, in that you know, I was dedicated to go to school, especially to receive my AA at first, and that was really my end goal at that time. And you know, during those years, not just well, first of all, I wasn't really able to capitalize on programs, if you will. There was a little bit of a disconnect between you know, life and circumstance for me and being able to access those kinds of services. And so, you know, in one way, I was fortunate to kind of go in without having you know, an amount of an amount of stigma attached to me. And that, at the same time, it was also a hindrance in a way because I wasn't able to access those services. So I think that for me, the most kind of influential type of service was provided through teachers and through, persons who genuinely saw my worth, if you will, as a student and as a person even, but it was about those leaders, if you will, that were teachers or otherwise staff and faculty back at Sacramento City College that encouraged me, and even when I would go through times, whether it was due to my health or tough times just due to what anyone would go through as far as trying to achieve grades and reach their academic goals. Just to have, I think it was my philosophy professor. Her name was Dr. Forrester. She was very supportive of me and encouraging, if you will. And not to mention, I had a math teacher at that time. I really had struggled at math for at first, and I almost considered giving up if I wasn't able to pass this one particular math class. And so just to have Mr. Rosenberger is what we called him back then. He took time and was patient with me, and it clicked. And so I think as is the case with almost all students, having those types of influential persons for me was very instrumental in me being able to pursue my career in the way that I have thus far.
Thank you so much for sharing that. As you look back on those years and thinking about leaving high school and even your first years in post-secondary education, are there any programs or initiatives or services that you wished you had been provided? It could even be a training or something of that nature that you think students could benefit from?
Well, let's see. So when I graduated from high school, I was coming from a continuation school. I graduated from a continuation school. And so a lot of the services that I was familiar with, I think back home were called EOPS. And they had to do with, helping pay for books. I was obviously, well, not obviously, but I was facing a lot of poverty at that time. And so EOPS was a program that was kind of geared to students in general with disabilities and without, but that were coming from poverty and kind of a disadvantaged background, if you will. And so unfortunately, I wasn't able to access those services at that time, but I think that those services would have helped me a lot back then. I also know that the way that we think about disability has kind of changed from that time. This is when I first started in community college. It was maybe late 90s, early 2000s. I got my first degree in 2001. And so back then it was kind of disability was, check a box, are you disabled or not? And I think the way that we think about disability has came a long way since then. If you think about things like the Washington model, or maybe even thinking about disability as kind of existing on a spectrum more so than a yes or no. So I wish in a way that that was a thing back then too. I think that would have helped a lot of people, including myself, understand not just my needs, but even what I needed to kind of focus on or otherwise realize about myself when I first started out in school back then, in college, if you will.
Right, yeah, thank you. What do you think young people should know to be prepared for, to be successful in post-secondary education environment?
Well, I think that young people in general, I think have to again dedicate themselves to an amount of drive or want to. When I talk to my kids, I call it like your gumption. What it is that makes you want to become in this world. And so I think that for all persons in high school, I think it's very important that you kind of get familiar with that and develop that skill. It's almost a way of kind of, I call it like sharpening your teeth, or otherwise becoming hungry for what you want to achieve, and not just in life, but specifically, within your college, career. And so I would emphasize that to persons, to young people that are thinking about college or purpose to go to college. You have to dedicate themselves to that. But I would argue for persons with disabilities, I think that it's important that not just that they develop that sharpening their teeth almost in a very intense kind of way, I would even pose that I think we need to be able to, I don't know, not be afraid to be familiar with each other and our community in a way. When I was younger, I was, uh, felt stigmatized so much by the concept of disability that I often would kind of pull away from being categorized that way, and that included not trying to, not just hang out or be seen, if you will, but even to engage, that community, because I felt that would make me look as part of that community. And I know that sounds weird, but when I was younger, that was kind of a thing. And I think the more that we can get young people, not necessarily accepting an identity that's stigmatized, but more so becoming comfortable with their identity in a way that allows them to learn from others that experience similar things, but also to kind of offer guidance, when they are going through what they're going through when it comes to, transitioning from high school to college. I think that oftentimes, like I said, it's an identity that we don't, I don't want to say necessarily take to, but it's one that I think is can become unhealthy if we're a little bit too preoccupied with not accepting that part of us. And so, yeah, I would offer to young people with disabilities to be comfortable with that, and to engage those opportunities, and engage those communities, not just for yourself but for others as well.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really powerful answer and goes right into my next question. So the last question I have for you is, what inspired you to become an advocate, and what has been your favorite part of this experience? I know you have advocated at the state level for a long time. So excited to hear a little bit more about kind of how you got involved in that and what that's looked like for you.
Right. So my advocacy journey started right around about so after I got my degree from City College in music, I actually started a recording company, and I published music for about 4 or 5 years straight without going back to school. And I say about 2005 or 6 thereabouts, I went back to school and really thought of myself as becoming more of an academic. I thought about attending graduate school at that time, and well, not at that time, but in my future. And so, in the process of doing that, kind of finding my purpose, if you will, within the education system. Not just did I see a need for an improvement in the way that institutions conceive of disability, whether that's education or otherwise. But I also, because I had came from poverty, I had really a desire to kind of make a situation or a circumstance a little bit better, because I know I remember how hard it was for me. And then also, it was one of those things where I was not just advocating for others, but advocating for myself. And so, I was lucky enough to be put into touch with the right people at the right time. And so, it was, my original intentions when I first started with advocacy really had to do with Social Security income. So I grew up, I was on Social Security, from childhood, right? Not the kind where you work and pay in, but it's disability that children get based on their limited ability to access the workforce. And so what I really wanted to do had to do with cuts that were made during 2007, I want to say, when Schwarzenegger had been the governor of California those days, that were made to Social Security that hadn't been being restored as the economy recovered. And at that time, I was working at the Employment Development Department, and it was right around the time I started to apply to be with the disability advocacy or disability committee, if you will, for the Employment Development Department. But I also, because my goals were beyond, just areas of employment, I reached out to a organization called Dogfight, and it stood for Disability Organizing Group for Initiating Total Equality. and Francis Grace Child was the head of the RIL back in Sacramento. And so, long story short, I was very lucky to kind of on my initial, jump into advocating, was able to be put in touch with some people that had an amount of influence in that realm. And so it was one of those things where I was advocating around restorative cuts for persons on Social Security, but it quickly developed into advocating about all things disability and issues thereby attached. A lot of times when we think about disability, we always think about people who have a disability, but we don't realize how the concept of disability kind of seeps into the way that we conceive of people in general. And so, I think coupled with being able to get in that way, that being coupled with having an amount of kind of success or praise early on in my advocacy career, really kind of encouraged me to make that a big part of my life since then, for the better part of a decade now.
Thank you so much. It's been really awesome to learn about and about your experiences. And thank you so much for sharing that all with us. We're very lucky to have you here today. So I really appreciate it. If we can hop on to the next slide, we are going to hear more from all of our attendees today. So thank you to both of our amazing speakers. And now we want to open it up to the audience and have everyone join in and be a part of this discussion. So we're going to start by putting a poll on the screen with our first discussion question. So the poll will be open for 2 minutes. And if you all don't mind to just answer the question. So what kind of career development activities have you been involved in? So whether this was an internship, maybe that you did during high school or after high school, an apprenticeship, any sort of mentoring or other trainings, maybe a summer job, something like that. Feel free to go ahead and answer the poll in there. And then what we'd like to do is have a little bit more discussion in the chat box. So if you want to speak a little bit more about your experience, go ahead and share that over in the chat box. And as we start to get answers coming into the poll, in the chat box, I'd like for people to think about what's a job that you've really enjoyed, that you loved having, maybe an internship that you enjoyed having. Can you tell us about that in the chat box? Or maybe how did you find your job? Thank you to everyone who participated. It looks like we had 62% of people answered that they had been participated in some sort of internship. 11% have done an apprenticeship, and 41% had done a mentoring experience, and 43% said they have done another training. And we're going to move on to the second poll question. We'll get that on the screen. So the question is, have you seen training experiences lead to getting hired for jobs? So trainings can look a lot of different ways, whether it be a class you might take, or whether you're working on the job shadowing someone, or going to some sort of hands-on class that helps give you the skills that you need for your job. So very excited to hear from all of our attendees whether these training experiences have led you to getting hired for a job. And if anyone has had this experience or knows someone who has, feel free to share it in the chat to share with the audience so we can learn more.
Dina, if, when it's appropriate, I kind of want to speak a little bit to that too.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and jump in, Joseph.
Yes, I started to type, but when you talk about internships and mentors, I think that that part of it can't be underemphasized. I mean, even having the opportunity kind of to come to University of Kentucky and transferred from Sac State to finish my doctorate, I wouldn't have been able to even get into graduate school, period. But especially for my doctorate degree, had I not had an opportunity to intern, at UC Davis with the California Civic Engagement Project. I think Mindy Ramiro still heads that. I think she might be at USC now. But and then also once I got to Sac State, having a person like Julian stick up for me, Julian Bass-Tiley kind of just vouch for me. I think those kinds of things, kind of having leaders that are in position to, directly kind of, diversify, if you will, education or their employment setting, that are actually, explicitly, purpose to that or dedicated to that. I think that kind of concept is really one of the most powerful ways I think that persons who are in those positions can influence not just someone's life, but also the perception of disability within their organization in general. And so yeah, when you brought that up, I thought that was something maybe I didn't touch on quite well enough that I think is very key to making this whole thing go right.
Yes, thank you so much. We had someone else message us in the questions chat box, and they shared that they participated in an internship when they were in college, and that really helped them determine whether the goal that they had set for themselves was a match. So they said the internships are a great way to test out a job. So if anyone out there hasn't done an internship or is looking to try out a new job, this participant suggests that they're a great way to test it out. All right, let's move on to our next poll discussion question. About this today, and it's great to learn that people have different supports, whether it be teachers, parents, counselors, or other programs. If you all don't mind to add in the poll. Looks like answers are coming in quickly. Seeing a lot of people say parents and teachers. If you answered other programs, we'd be interested to learn more about what programs you were involved in that helped you with this, and you can enter an answer in the questions box, and that will send it right over to us where we can see it. I see one of our attendees said that they work a lunch job and really like that. That's awesome. So it looks like we're seeing a lot of other programs. Feel free to answer that in the question box so we can see. And we have one participant that was an intern at a theater. That's a great way to see if you like that. We had one participant say that they have applied for a lunch job and worked there for a while, but wants to work with other people with disabilities. That's great. Thanks for sharing. One person said that they found a job through ResCare Workforce Services that helps job development for TCA recipients. So that's another great program that can help you find work. Thank you so much for sharing. Someone said that sometimes just other people help, not necessarily programs, that people with disabilities are isolated and natural connections are very important. That's a great point. Someone else mentioned trying community college, but there is a barrier with transportation. So transportation is something that is needed to access that higher education. One of our attendees said they worked at a child care and day camp as a lifeguard at the YMCA. That sounds fun. This is great. Someone else shared that they've gotten 2 jobs from people observing the work that I did at my current job. So hard work, and then it's observed by other people, and then you get another job. That's great. One of our other attendees said they're currently in community college. Beyond Joseph's path. Thank you all so much for sharing. Our goal is to learn from you all, and hopefully you all can also learn from each other. One of our attendees said that they did a work studies program while they were in college. So when we're looking at the poll results, it looks like about 30% of people said that their parents were who helped them most, and then 42% of people mentioned other programs. So I think that's where we're getting a lot of the answers. So thanks for sharing more about the other programs. And then we had about 13% say teachers and 13% say counselors. So looks like you all are getting help from all over. It looks like we had another person answer with a really good point about mental health problems and how that can cause a struggle to be interested in working. So it's a reminder that mental health is definitely something that we want to focus on when we think about employment, as it impacts that as well. Once again, someone mentioned needing transportation to get to college and a job. Talking about different barriers to employment, and part of that is what our work here is, and we hope to engage with you all more in the future. And here in a minute at the end, we'll put our contact information up, because what we want to help you all do is remove these barriers to get to work, whether it be transportation or mental health, or simply just finding the connections to someone to get you a job, whether it's filling out that application or whatever that might be. We want to help make that process easier for you. So I really appreciate all of you sharing your experiences, and would love to connect with you further and talk with you later as well beyond the webinar. And our contact information will be on the slide here in a few minutes. All right. Thank you all so much. We're getting towards the end of our webinar now. So we are going to move on to our closing remarks. but would love to talk with you all more, like I said, and we'll put our contact information up and we'll talk with you additionally. Moving on though, we are going to pass it over to Jennifer Thomas. Jennifer Thomas works for the U.S. Department of Labor in their Office of Disability Employment Policy. So she's a great partner of ours and would love to have her give a few closing remarks. And thank you all so much for attending.
Thank you, Sydney. And thank you all for participating today and sharing your insight regarding your experiences as it relates to employment. We've had 2 awesome speakers, and the information that was shared in the chat box was very valuable. We just want you all to know that we want to be able to ensure that programs and agencies are serving youth to the best of their ability. And the reality is that we need your input to do that. Often we realize that youth and young adults are not offered a meaningful seat at the table to discuss matters that are relevant to them. And often they want to be included. And so these series of conversations provide that opportunity for you all to share what is important to you and what you would like to see, and so that you all can help us to ensure that the work that we are doing best supports you all. So we really appreciate your being on today and taking the time. We know that you could have been doing anything else, but we hope that you will continue to be involved in this effort. I know that Sydney and Dina are providing contact information so that you can follow up if you like. And I just want to encourage you to do that and to let you know that your voice, your opinions, and your feedback really do matter to us. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Really appreciate that. And everything you said is so true. And we're so excited to continue these discussions and learn from you all and what your needs are and what would help make your experience better. So if we can move on to the next slide, we'll go ahead and put our, and as we do that, we are having another webinar on June 16th at the same time, so in 2 weeks. And we will be continuing these conversations. We'd love to have you all attend again and participate with us there. And we will be sending a follow-up survey after this, and that's just to get a little bit more feedback from you all, continue to learn from you all, and hopefully we can work together to make sure that everyone can find employment and find meaning in employment and reduce some of those barriers that you all discussed. So thank you so much for your participation. I'm sorry if we didn't get to your question or comment, but we're going to try to email you and follow up with you that way. And look forward to talking with you all in the morning. Thanks again to our speakers, and thanks to all of our participants for coming today. Hopefully we will be in contact soon, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.